Hi everyone, my name is Nick and I'm a sound designer. Today on the Paintover Power Hour, we're going to look at a scene from Sonic Superstars, a recent multiplayer classic from Sega's Little Blue Hedgehog. I was a Nintendo youth, but my friend had a Sega Genesis. Despite my Mario loyalties, I loved the Sonic games, with their speed, diversity of worlds, and the iconic sounds that still evoke memories for me today. So for this episode, we're going to take a closer look at one of the big moments in Sonic Superstars and why it inspired me to have fun making new sound design for it. Before we do that though, let me introduce you to my new channel. I would welcome you back, but this is the first video in this series, so instead, I'll just say thanks for stopping by and tell you a bit about myself. I've been a video game sound designer for a really long time, but due to a shift in responsibilities, I've been getting rusty and have been looking to find something that will challenge my abilities and refresh some latent skills. So here's the theme. I'm going to perform what's called a paintover, or sound effect redesign of a short, silent video, but do it in only an hour. It's going to require me to make quick decisions, not mind grind all the details, and keep going even when I feel uninspired. So just like Sonic, I gotta go fast. My son and I recently finished Sonic Superstars, and this particular scene really caught my attention. It's the final battle with Dr. Robotnik, and there's just so much cool stuff going on in the sequence. I mean, look at it. Who doesn't love a big honking jet-powered robot landing in the middle of a crumbling, lava-filled silo for a climactic battle? So here are the primary goals with this particular video. First, keep it real. I'm going to do this by avoiding an overly designed, synthy aesthetic since it's an earthly machine and not an alien or otherworldly technology. Also, many of Dr. Robotnik's big machines feel like they're just waiting to fall apart, so I'm going to have a little fun and play off the visual effects we see by giving it an almost steampunk feel. It should feel unrefined and raw, but not sloppy, hefty and grounded, but not invincible. And with that, let's get designing. The first thing I'm going to do is scroll through frame by frame and look for some good hit points. I love collisions and weapon shots. That's where all the fun is had, but other things like arms moving, pressure being released, and mechanics turning need a lot of love too, so here we go. Dropping red markers on the canvas gives me a visual record of where the action will happen. Done right, it tells me a few different things, like the pace of the action just by looking at it. It also tells me how the energy should be distributed over time. Sound design is always about pace, and this set of markers will be my first clues about how that should feel. The next thing I do after that is open Basshead, if it isn't open already. It's a tool among many in the shed, but one I can't live without. Maybe there's a better sound librarian out there, but this has always done exactly what I wanted it to over the last 15 years of using it. I don't use most of its features, but still, it helps me, as the slogan says, find shit fast. So let's really get started here. I need to inspire fear right off the start. We see this raging fire coming down at us, followed by these sharp pointy fingers, armored shoulders, a giant egg body, and then we see how gargantuan it is when it finally settles down next to Sonic. Can't wimp out or think too hard here because we need a good rocket right off the bat. I spend a quick moment worrying about comments on this video that will hurt my feelings, and then in my immediate panic, something comes to mind. Apollo 16. I remember that because there's a sample of the Apollo 16 rocket taking off in my library, and it's one of my favorites. Here's your typical roar, but layered on top are these pops that give it shape and dimension. It's weird to say, but it's my favorite rocket sample. To me, it says power, and it has great texture, so we're adding it. And that's where things heat up. Later, I'm going to blow out this channel trying to make it too loud, but to be fair, I'm going to go about it enthusiastically. Before I get too far, I remember I have to add a mastering plugin to the main output bus. I get a little reminder of that looking over at the red clipping warning on the right side there. To me, picking a mastering suite is like picking what brown soda you like. You can have a favorite and not all of them are good. For me, Ozone is my Dr. Pepper. It's unique, it's remained consistent over the years, and it has a great light version available. What does that make Coca-Cola? I don't know because this is comment bait, and I want you to tell me. Fire away. Now that I'm protecting my master bus from further intrusion of over-enthusiastic power, I'm going to do the exact opposite for this rocket booster by adding a transient shaper. My intent is to really bring out the pops by emphasizing the peaks so that they jump out and bark. Nonetheless, there will be some bite to this exercise too, as I'm going to forget to add a limiter and consequently crush the output. We'll have to hope these two plugins cooperate with one another. So now I'm going to listen to my suite of rockets and see what they sound like so far. Okay, a little too obvious where all the layers are, but it nonetheless has a nice little shape to it. The frequencies might not match that great, but the energy does, and that lets me give myself an excuse to work on something else. Now I need to find a sound for the body twisting around like it's some kind of deadly pullback toy. I used to love those as a kid with a click, 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 but I'm going to need to find something bigger than that. I'm thinking to myself that these socket wrench sounds just won't do when I land on what sounds like big sprockets grinding against each other. Perfect thing to use, so I slot it in. This is before an almost fruitless attempt at synchronizing it with the visual action as I split, heal, and stretch my way to some amount of success before I give up on it, remembering for the second time that I need to move faster. I think about now finding the sounds of metal rattling. This is for a couple of reasons, but the primary has everything to do with the setting. We're clearly in some kind of metal silo that has now become so dilapidated that it's literally coming apart at the seams. Obviously, this big metal behemoth is going to shake the walls, so I go about trying to find something that's appropriately noisy and rickety. The second reason I need to find this material is my biggest hit point, where the behemoth lands and the entire screen shakes. Lots of great opportunities here. I listen to it over and over again because I obviously want to get the timing right, but also because I just love how it sounds. Eventually, I'm able to break free from my adoration to move forward because there's still a lot of work to do. Let's check in on the progress so far. All right, I can dig that. We've got a shape and some movement. It's moving like a three-legged dog, but it's moving in a good direction. I'm going to keep going. Now I hit the middle section, one that I was looking forward to. It's the head winding up, and presumably the time this thing starts to charge itself up in some kind of exorcistic fashion. I know this because I cheated, and by that I mean I remember that effect from the sound of the original audio. Now, I want to note it's pretty much impossible not to hear the sound of an original clip and not be affected by it. I want my creations to be as unique as the person that makes them, but one must also be open to the practice of homage, and that's what I'm going to do here. When I played this for the first time, I loved how this rising whine created a thread between encroaching danger, the increase of power, and the promise of violence. So, I'm going to do that too. I apply a high-pass filter and draw up a pitch envelope to create the desired effect. It's a small detail for now, but one that I'll emphasize in the next pass. Back to that wind-up action again. The ratcheting noise just isn't enough to sell this, so I'm going to take a bit of a risk here and dive into my design-heavy mecha sounds. I generally try to avoid design cinematic libraries because while they sound cool, they can stymie creativity by essentially painting you into an auditory corner. They save time, but at the cost of sucking up all the available oxygen in the mix. That said, they do save time, and that's the real resource I'm trying to preserve here. Now we're starting to cook. The foreground and background elements are starting to have a relationship with one another, and that's a critical part of this whole assembly. Not everyone in the mix can be cool and awesome at the forefront, as my awkward teenage self will tell you, but my mature self will offer that without shadows, there is no dimension, so we're going to not get too concerned with some of the audio elements being a little buried right now. I start thinking about the landing of the mech again. It has some metal rattling, sure, but how about a little debris? It'll create a greater sense of chaos that will gel nicely with the shaking of the screen. I want the scene to feel like things are getting ready to fall apart, and I find some samples that will fit. I like that. Here again. I love it. Big, chunky slam. You can practically feel it, which is exactly what I'm trying to evoke. Now, unfortunately, I've made a mess here, as I've been stacking my tracks one after another for each sound effect I add, so my project has gotten super vertical. I have to spin my wheels a bit, cleaning everything up. I'm finally going to add some hydraulic sounds for the arms articulating, but I'm running into a problem. My music brain decides to make an appearance that was unscheduled to perform duties that weren't requested. Specifically, I'm now struggling with the question of what music interval would be the best to use for this moment. Minor third? Major second? Eventually I get frustrated and just mute them so I can come back to it later, not sure if I'm going to afford myself the time to do so. Now that that decision is taken care of, I'm going to take another look at what we've got. It's definitely still progressing nicely, but it's got a long way to go, and with only 20 minutes left on the clock, I need to stop getting obsessive over details and start filling in some of the holes of my sound design. If I continue to get too focused on any particular thing now, it's going to cost me in the end. One of the holes I want to address is right here where it all began, where the hovering rocket sounds play nice and just kinda sit there. I need something to break up this monotony. I noticed that despite my earlier assumption, the arms actually move for the first time during this part of the sequence, as opposed to much later, so there's an opportunity to add something. Now it's finally time to add some reverb, which has more magic in it than can be properly discussed in the amount of time I have left in this video before I lose you. Suffice to say that reverb is just so much more than an echo. It's a tinted wash, it's colored lighting, it's a gap filler, it's a story setter, and it's going to help me conceal some of my mistakes. I give it another quick listen, and I can hear that something's missing. I wanted to create a sense of drama right where the spinning motion of the body stops briefly before reeling backward, but I don't feel it, so I've got to manufacture the moment. I bump the volume of the mix down just for a moment before quickly raising it back to where it was. It can be very effective. Even better if there's a loud effect outside that envelope that fires off just before the volume recovers, creating a springboard effect. I'm astonished to see I have only 5 minutes left, and I haven't even picked music yet. I have only a handful of songs to go through, but I want to pick what most closely resembles what I'm already hearing in my head. I land on something that feels right, spend a quick moment wishing I had gathered a more sophisticated collection, and then move on. I have only seconds left when I decide I need the last puff of steam to have a weightier feel. I rifle through my library and quickly drop it into the timeline. And then, time runs out. I fold my hands and immediately start to wonder if this whole thing was a bad idea. Is this really good enough for an hour's work? I'm kind of pleased with it, but I'm also disappointed. There are so many mix elements I want to fix, and deeper design tricks I want to employ, but I just don't have the time. Rules are rules. 1 hour, no more. Let's see where that leaves us. So after watching this 100 times while editing this for weeks, I've grown fond of my portrayal of Dr. Robotnik's Death Egg. It might not be something destined for a demo reel, but it's accomplished the goals that I set forth in the beginning. It feels real, it's not too designed, it has a fun pseudo-steampunk feel, and it has some great weight. Most importantly, I had a lot of fun with this exercise and with testing my limits. Thanks for sticking with me, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. We've got a bunch more episodes to go, and I can't wait to show you what's next. Be sure to join me again as I do a paint-over for the opening sequence of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It's going to be a blast. Thank you for watching, and see you again. You ready to make sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, for that.
Yeah.
For the video.
Okay.
It's over.